Okay, so we are out by the pool at Fiori on Vitruvian Park. This is the first pool of two that they refer to as the ellipse pool because of the shape. And it has this nice big walkway here, surrounded by the fountains that leads out to the pool. We have the little grilling areas and stuff to the side. And yeah, there's some lounge space under these pergolas. And as you can see from the sun angle, the sun does come up over the other side of the building. So this big tower provides some shade until a little bit later in the morning. Right now, it's about 10:45 a.m. So you see that the main pool area is already in direct sunlight. If you're out here a little bit earlier in the morning, you still have shade from the building, and the sun's really just kind of peeked over the edge. So I would say until about 10, we have pretty decent shade in this area. But obviously, the earlier, the better, and the softer the light's going to be. So, there's some good opportunities to shoot, around these lounge chairs and stuff, depending on, what kind of angle you want to get on it. I don't find the signs in the background are all that attractive, but, if you shoot back this way, that can be a pretty good look. Toward the building and the fountains, I like that as a backdrop a little bit better. So the pool itself is like 4 feet at the deepest part. So it's pretty easy to do whatever you want. I try to stick around the edge for using flash, which I do most of the time. But really good opportunities with the steps here to be at different depths. And, of course, like right here, you can get nice low shots if you want to get mostly sky, or you can come all the way up and get more water. If you take more of a high angle shot, then it's all water and you can really eliminate the background. That's fairly easy to do, but the park view is really nice. And on a good sky day, I do like some nice cloud texture and stuff. Today's pretty clear. There's a couple clouds in the sky, but on a super clear day, it can be just like too bright to get a decent exposure if you want any kind of shallow depth of field. So, it really just kind of depends on what you're trying to do. But, this whole area around here all looks nice. This area is kind of cool because you got some striping from the construction of the pergola. So if you want to use the sun, you can get some interesting lighting patterns on a model, or even just fill it in with flash and have some interesting textures on the background. It's kind of neat. It varies by the angle and the time of day and all that. So as you come around here, this is a decent little spot if you want to hide the electrical boxes there. Sometimes I put somebody seated on the edge of the pool there, so you can get green on one side, the pool, the building, get the whole thing. This isn't bad shooting from this side. If you want the building in the background, maybe the sky is too bright and it's just really not working for you. This is an option as well to pull in this way. You could do it this direction too, like from the other side, but I think this one's probably better because if you're coming this way, they usually have more furniture over here for whatever reason, so it's like more junk to move out of the way. But this building angle is not as attractive in terms of the orientation of the pool, and because of the angle of the sun, there's a lot of reflection from those windows and the white areas of the building, versus this side is still in shadow during the morning. So I would say it makes a lot more sense to shoot from this side and use this composition here toward the pool. This is kind of cool over here where they have this raised bed that's kind of separated. So if you wanted to use this lounge chair, right around this little area, that's kind of a neat composition. Table's optional, obviously. You could even use this one and get like that kind of shot. That's not bad. If you really wanted to be in the shade, this is a pretty decent one. I'm not a huge fan of the trash can in the back, but you could move it or just block it. So lots of good options there. And then, let's see. So if you want to use the park as a backdrop, that also works really well. get some park and some sky. It's lots of green. There's a little bit of a water feature depending on the angle you get. And there's enough room over here that you can set up lights. I find this angle a little problematic. I mean, it's not bad if you really wanted to kind of put the sun behind somebody and, you know, have them sit on this nice blue wall. You can always move these lounge chairs out of the way. It's a little bit tricky with this sort of shallow lounge area, because in order to get your lights close enough to someone that's seated on the blue wall there, you kind of need to put your light stands in the water, which I'm not a huge fan of doing. If you keep them over here, it's a little too far away and you may not have enough power to work with it, but it's still an option. The other interesting thing that you can do is move these loungers out of the way and have your model kneel in the water or sit in the water and have kind of a partially submerged shot. Seated, the depth is a little weird, so you start getting some distortion, but kneeling is not too bad. So I've taken some cool shots that way. Of course, you could move more of these furniture out of the way and have them sit, or you could sit on the loungers and kind of use all this as a backdrop. If you're going to backdrop it with this much furniture, then I feel like you have to put some effort into making sure it's all straight. The cleaning crew is just out here, so it's all pretty well organized at the moment. But sometimes at different parts of the day, it gets a little messy. So got some options for angles and composition there. If you wanted to come over here and really you kind of hide in the shade, there's a little bit of an area here where the building is throwing a shadow. It's a little less room to put up light stands and stuff, but you know, we do what we can. So I'm going to move over to the other pool and pause this while I'm doing that. Okay, so we're coming out to the other pool, which they refer to as the shade pool, largely due to this big architectural overhang that shades the pool for the majority of the day at various angles. So as you come up these steps, get a better view of it. So same style of lounge furniture. I think some of the opportunities to shoot over here are a little bit better on the furniture because you have more shade and they line up a little bit better. So this is one of my favorite angles to shoot from because you can really make use of the columns and you get the pool and the sky and you have shade to work with. So I always enjoy that and employ that one quite a bit. I like shooting down this row of furniture because you still get the pool and the sky and have some interesting background. Of course, there's still a portion of the park that you can view from this angle. So there's green, there's the blue from the water, there's the blue from the tree. There's a little bit of architectural interest with this nice building in the background. I also enjoy this scene over here. I kind of avoid that seat because it's got that concrete wall in the background, but I really find that this one is a pretty effective choice, especially kind of shooting through this gap. If you move the sofa over a little bit, that works really well. I don't dislike some of these angles and the use of the columns in the background, but it can be a little bit tricky. I've never had great luck with having somebody kind of climbing out of the ladder there, but I have seen shots where that has worked, kind of like a pulled up bikini shot. This area over here is kind of tricky because you have the driveway down there. And also there's a lot of birds that tend to hang out right here because you've got this shallow spillway kind of thing. And they like to use it as their little bird bath. You can see one there. So if you get a really, really low shot on it, there's some pretty cool stuff that you can do and get some nice sky. But what I tend to prefer to do is actually turn around and shoot this way and position my model either standing here in the shallow water and kind of leaning against the wall, or posted up seated on the blue tile wall with the pool in the background. And of course, you have the nice looking architecture and the building and the greenery in the background, a little bit of glass. You can shoot high and get a little bit of sky. That works too. I've used this angle before, but I don't like it as much as the one from the other side. So that is what the shade pool looks like. I've also made use of this area before. This isn't bad. If you seat someone like here on the left and then shoot past that column into the sky. That works pretty well. These two columns are kind of hit and miss, especially because of this railing here. It's a little bit difficult to shoot around the railing and not have it in the way. But I have successfully had, say someone seated on this column here, leaning against that, seated on the little ledge. That works pretty well. This can be a good shot. It's a little bit of a high angle, but it can be cute for the right person. I have issues with the way that ladder and sign in the background ends up looking, especially if you're shooting wide aperture and it kind of blurs. It looks weird, and if it's like sticking out of their head, that looks kind of bizarre. And then you have some strange stuff going on with the drains and vent, stuff in the bottom that doesn't seem like a big deal on a video like this, but when you have a high-res portrait and one of those things is running right next to someone's face, it looks kind of odd. So I would just be careful about composing where those are intersecting with someone. If they're off to the side, disconnected a little bit, then I feel like they're easier to remove. This isn't bad for kind of like a laid out shot, a little bit lower angle, seated on the side of the pool, looking back at the camera. It's pretty easy to light. So lots of good options there. And I think I'll move on to one of the other areas to take a look at that. This is a good spot right here on this big wooden bench. You got a nice tree in the background and a little bit of a wall in the back to give you more of a solid backdrop. I've used that quite a few times. It doesn't get a lot of sun, so it looks like the grass is a little brown, but if you're really kind of shooting it from the right angle, and I don't worry about it too much, it's not visible. So if you wanted a little bit of a different look, you could sit here on the end of this bench and get a little bit more depth down the row there, or down the walkway rather. And you get a little bit of a sky. You can also kind of come in here and get this angle that's nice, like kind of skyscraper look in the background, or more modern building with more glass on the exterior of the gym. You can't, it's reflective, so you can't see all the equipment on the inside. I do like some of this area over here. I'm careful about the grass because it's actually turf, which is good because it stays green year round, and it's a perfectly pleasant little place to come have a picnic or lay out and do some yoga or something like that. And they don't allow dogs out here, so there's not a bunch of landmines to deal with. You could stand or sit in front of this wall. I find it a little drab, so if I'm going to shoot this area, I'm usually thinking about coming around over here and getting like this kind of a scene and composition. Looks nice with the sky and the building. And they just refreshed the landscaping for the season. So we've got, seasonal florals and everything looks nice and tidy. And then this is also a nice composition down the row with the architecture and the sky in the background, and these planters and the greenery, and that all looks really nice. And there's some chairs and a sofa over here that you could pull over and use, and some there in the background too, if you wanted to do some seated shots. I've done them standing, seated, either which way over in this area. So this isn't bad right now, even though the sun's overhead, because this tree is throwing a lot of shade. But I would say in general, maybe early morning or in the evening is a better time for this little area. This can be pretty cool over here too. If you want more of the yellowish green type of look, there's a good bit of space right here, and you could kind of compose like this. If you want to use the sky, get down a little bit lower, still make use of the architecture. If you want to include the columns at different angles, that works really well. This isn't a bad composition either, especially if you wanted to put the sun's getting a little high at the moment, but if it was lower and it was earlier, it's still not bad because you can see it's throwing the shadow this way, so it'd at least be behind somebody's head. If you wanted to place them there, that's not a bad plan. I've had people sit up on this ledge before. It's pretty narrow, so that's kind of tricky, not for everybody, but it has been done. Even done a few laid out shots with that composition. So maybe one person, not recommended for like a family thing or anything like that. And it needs to be somebody who's fairly agile. And then as you come through this area, this little spot is kind of difficult to deal with. So it's not my favorite. And I think they need to refresh some of the landscaping over here. This is not a great, like, photogenic type of area. This spot, on the other hand, is really cool. So I've shot in front of the waterfall quite a bit. Lots of options there. These funky chairs are really cool. I like those a lot. There's a nice composition that you can get right here using these planters and then the waterfall in the background. That looks really nice. Or if you want to get a little bit more depth down the row and get like a longer lineup, that's also possible. You might have to remove or block visibility of these little plumbing access ports. This area is kind of neat. I've used it before. It's a little tight to light in, but there's a pool table. So for certain themes, I thought that was pretty cool. Of course, with this furniture here is really lightweight, so it could be pulled outside if you wanted to use it over in the courtyard. So that's pretty nice. And then this over here, again, it's all turf. So I don't feel like it photographs all that well. It looks a little unnatural, but you could do seated shots, maybe put a chair. I mean, you've got enough space and stability to put light stands. So if you wanted to compose, say, from here, there's some choices. And then one of the scenes that I really like is over here. I don't so much care for it going this way, but I do quite like coming back the other way because you have some really cool. This is not a good time of day for it. This works well either in the morning or the evening. We're kind of getting into the part of the day where the sun's pretty high in the sky, so it's it's pretty harsh, but that's okay. Still good for an example. So this is good to kind of post up, right here. You can lean against this wall. Sometimes I even have people play with these beams, but it's a nice deep scene. So if you're shooting shallow depth of field, you get that nice kind of depth effect with leading lines. That's really cool. And then this is pretty good over here too. With this little furniture area. Some little birds freaking out. It's okay. Even seated right here. It's a little tight for lighting, but if you're wearing the right clothes to complement the darker furniture, it can work well. Obviously right now it's super bright in the background, even though we're in the shade here. So that makes it a little tricky. But, nice, pleasant courtyard background. And if we get the right time of day for light, that works well. So that's a lot of my favorite stuff for the Fiori pools and courtyard. And I'll trim this down a little bit. So this is a cute spot right here that I've used before. Because of the dividers in the flower bed here, I almost feel like you need to put down a blanket or something. It's probably easier than sitting on the rocks too if you want to do seated shots. Kind of soften things up a little bit. But I like the green and purple combination and with the gray stone. It's not enough space to do like multiple people, but for one person, actually one of my favorite quinceañera portraits was actually right here. So that's pretty neat. Now, if you came around from this side, again, I would probably put down a blanket or something, and you'd have to be a little careful about how you sit because they've cut these tree stumps down I don't know what was here before, but this flower bed's kind of bare. But if you really wanted to kind of compose against, yeah, like that, I don't know. I don't really like the parking lot in the backdrop. Yeah, I'd probably skip that. Never mind. So this is out back of the building. So you're right here by the back entrance. This is a pretty neat little spot with a view of the park. A little bit of the bridge in the scene, you know, depending on how wide of an angle you want to shoot. Yeah, nice bit of sky. Problem is this time of day, it's too bright from this side. I think it makes a better evening shot. And then as you come down into this area, this is the one spot along the path that's just really, really heavily shaded. So you get this nice dappling effect on the sidewalk with the sunlight. And of course, you can see through the trees to the water, and you know, more green in the background. So you have to be a little careful about getting in the way of foot traffic, but this is a cute spot. And you can probably put lights on either side of the path and then just get out of the way if somebody was trying to walk through. So that's a really viable spot. This is pretty good right here. But I think, again, it's like an evening type of area because the sun's coming up over my left shoulder and would be setting over there off to the right. So I think that's more evening viable. So this is another good spot that I think works well in the evening. Nice trees back there. The building's nice. You turn this way, get a nice view of the architecture, a little spillway waterfall, the amphitheater, you know, the sky, lots of water. The water doesn't look super blue because you've got all these trees reflecting against it, but the areas where the sky is reflecting, it looks nice and blue. And then coming this way, this is actually pretty decent for a morning thing. You could even get in the shade under those trees where these geese are. I don't know why they're always hanging out here. It's pretty common though. Probably scare them off, but you got to be careful because geese can be a little aggressive. There must be something about these trees that are here that, you know, attract the right kind of bugs that they're into, but they're always kind of rooting around in the ground over there. But this is viable because the trees are throwing enough shade and we're facing more eastern this way. So if we were out here in the morning, you get a little bit more shade or at least backlighting. If the birds were a problem, you know, you could even come over here and shoot from this way. You know, got nice shade from this tree. The ground's flat enough to put down light stands, so that would be okay. I could turn that way. I like this a little bit better because the sidewalk's kind of hidden, whereas this way it's a little bit more visible. It's going to be super bright with the sun reflecting off of it. So this amphitheater seating is pretty cool. It's a nice little event venue for the outside stuff that they do around here. They have bands playing stuff, but the problem is it basically, like, these stairs point right at the sunset. So when you're here for an evening event, it's nice because you have the sun at your back and you're not staring into the sun while you're trying to watch a performance. And they usually set up bands and whatnot right here. But if it was in the morning, you could very easily, like, put a blanket down right in front of these this greenery here as it, you know, goes out to the lake. That would be a nice shot. This is an interesting little spot here in Vitruvian Park, right under these 2-3 huge older shade trees that they sort of built this little pavilion around. So potentially have to move some furniture depending on how you want to compose the shot and everything, but this little bench can be kind of cute, sitting in front of this tree. And, you know, you can get lighting at any different angle. You know, of course, if you wanted to come over here by the railing, you could move some of this furniture out of the way and, you know, just use, like, oh, you could just stand by the railing. You could move all but one table and maybe set the table for a nice, you know, little, you know, breakfast kind of thing, or like a, you know, cocktail hour, put a tablecloth, make it a little romantic. Any of those things are possible depending on the time of day and the theme. But this amount of shade is quite nice to be able to work with. And then if you came over here, then you've got the backdrop of the waterway and this bridge. And the bridge is the same color as the furniture, which coordinates quite nicely. So that can be interesting. And then there's a few spots over farther out under the bridge, but you're getting kind of far away from the Fiori area at that point, and that gets a little tricky. There's obviously some areas over in the other parts of the park where if you just want sort of generic trees and that sort of background and less of the architecture, that works. I'll take a quick walk over there and see how it looks. So I've been successful before shooting under this bridge. That can work pretty well. It's one of those scenarios where you definitely have to use a good bit of flash and an ND filter or shooting high-speed sync so that you balance the very bright background with the shade, but at least you can keep the harsh light off you. Again, it's one of those spots where like it's concrete, so probably put a blanket down if you wanted to do seated shots, family type stuff. But yeah, there's some good composition that you can get from either side of the bridge, depending on which scenery you want to use. It's all, it's a lot of green and trees and water and sky, as you'd expect from a park scene. This is a pretty cool scene right here. If you like a more city style type thing with the Addison Ice House in the background. It's a bad time of day for it, but in the evening, it's a pretty cool shot. So this is a pretty cool area in the park that's right next to the Fiori building. There's this nice big expansive grass area, and by the time you get a little low, you don't really even see the concrete in the background. And you got a nice view of the sky. You can see from the angle, I mean, it's almost noon at this point, that the sun's coming up over there to the left, and of course will set back over my right shoulder. But depending on the time of day, you can sit on these benches and get some cool shots. You can post up against the rail and get some cool shots. There's some nice stripy lighting texture from the sun if you want to make use of that. So it's also nice that it's in close proximity to the building.